are so many people out there who want to volunteer and find a way in which they can help.
We've got some brilliant people that have come out of the school system here in Attleboro.
You actually perform as an elected official the way people should.
There are no agendas. Nobody has any projects that they have to complete, but we're just sharing information.
Welcome to People It's Good to Know. This week, we're very fortunate to have with us our local state representative, Adam Scanlon. Adam, thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Well, thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Now, I realized the other day that I hadn't had the opportunity to have you on my show because you were elected during the pandemic when we were taking a hiatus from filming. And so I'm very happy to get you on here. And, many of the people out there in Attleboro may not be all that familiar with you because, you were elected during the pandemic. You want to tell us a little bit about your background and
Sure.
how you got to this point?
Absolutely. So my name is Adam Scanlon. For those in Attleboro watching, I represent Precinct 3B, which is one out of the 12 precincts in Attleboro. So small but mighty representation. And I started getting involved in government when I was about 17 years old, when I was a student at North Attleboro High School. A lot of students and parents and community members were hearing about concerns within the school budget about programs not being funded and schools being closed and teachers being laid off and fees being increased. And I felt it was really important for somebody from my generation to really speak up and try to shake things up. So I remember I went to this finance committee meeting at the time, and I spoke about the importance of funding our public schools and what we must do to prepare our next generation for college and career readiness. And I went up and I spoke, and I was like, well, they're probably not going to listen to some 17-year-old that has never come to one of these meetings before. But as I went to go sit back down, I watched the discussion that was unfurling at the table in front of me, and one of the members of the finance committee said, I really appreciate what Adam was saying, and I do agree with his, assertions that we should fund Program X and Program Y for the reasons that he said. And I thought to myself, wow, just by going up and speaking my mind as a resident and citizen of the public, I made a difference in that one instance. And the more people that do so in those types of situations, that's how we drive, public change in our communities. So I continued to get the bug for my passion for public service, and as a senior in high school, I ran as a representative for a representative town meeting, which was the town's legislature at the time, the equivalent to the city council here in Attleboro. Mm-hmm. And I was successful, and I spent a lot of time learning about different issues, but I was still pretty upset with the way that the schools were being overseen from a governance perspective. I didn't feel that there was enough accountability, and I didn't feel we had a long-term or strategic plan in place on how we were going to move forward. Our high school was at risk of losing accreditation. Fees had gone up for full-day kindergarten, and so on and so forth. So I threw my hat in the ring, and people decided to take a chance on a 20-year-old at the time, and I learned a lot and was able to work on a lot of great different projects and meet a lot of great different people. And then 2 years later, North Attleboro voted to change its form of government from a town meeting to a town council. So I wanted to learn and advocate for other aspects that impact people's quality of life in the community, such as the services that we provide our seniors, our public safety, our parks and recreation, and so on and so forth. And I felt that I had a lot of experience to bring, and really wanted to be someone that continues to bring in a new generation of leadership on the town council. So I was elected then in 2019. And the following year, the representative seat at the State House opened up for my district, and I thought, well, I've done some great work here. I think there's definitely issues that we should be moving at the state level, and the rest is history.
Now, when you were elected state representative, were you the youngest state rep in that?
At the time, yeah, not anymore. So that currently there's somebody a little bit younger than me serving in the House.
That had to be quite an interesting experience, right? I mean, I don't know what other jobs you had held prior to being a state representative, but for someone that young to have that as now their full-time career is quite an experience, I imagine.
Yeah, I had worked at a nonprofit in Boston called Community Work Services, and their mission is to provide those that have faced barriers to employment resources to help them get a job. And I worked as an executive assistant for the executive director and handling different things, but it really gave me a perspective on realizing that everyone is coming from a different place than you, and we all have different needs, and we all are at a different point in our life. And it's kind of given me a perspective to think about, not everyone, lives behind the white picket fence and didn't have the same opportunities as me. And I think that's the thing about community is it is a community. It's made up of all different people. But, I mean, when I was elected as the youngest member, it was challenging, but it was also an opportunity to show my passions for what I wanted to work on in the House and where I think our state should be going in a variety of different areas. Sometimes I still get asked when I go into the State House, oh, what office do you work for? Who are you interning for? Right. So it's been, people are starting to catch on, after 2 years, but yeah, it was a great start, and it was very difficult, during COVID. We were kind of running a home command center.
I was going to say, a lot of your early time must have been on Zoom.
Yes.
So that a lot of your colleagues maybe didn't meet you right away in person.
Right, exactly. We didn't get afforded the traditional orientations and, gatherings that other people had in the past. So it was a little bit of a challenge, but it was also an opportunity. For me, that was my baseline. So I never really knew what it was like, before. That's kind of what I had to go off of.
You know what you know.
Yeah, exactly. And, ever since then, it's been a journey, and, it continues to be a moving target on what we want to focus on. And I went in thinking, okay, these are the issues we want to focus on. But like I was saying, everybody has a different perspective on things. And the thing that I've been hearing about and actually have seen right here in Attleboro is the need and the desire for more career technical education programs at the high school.
Yep.
And that has been my big focus, for the past 2 years, and it's going to continue to be until we, address the wait list and really start to put in concrete solutions to create a workforce for our future.
And I'm so happy to hear that, because that's something that I've been advocating for 3 decades. I mean, we really have a community here with such incredible opportunities. It's part of the reason I advocated for building a new high school was so that we could expand our vocational programs and train people for real jobs. The jobs of the future, not the jobs of the past.
Yes.
So what committees have you been assigned to at State House?
Sure. So I am a vice chair of the Committee on Intergovernmental Affairs, and our mission is to identify federal funding opportunities for the state. So I assist the chair in different projects and initiatives on that committee. And the other committees that I serve on, the main one is judiciary. So we're going to be having our first hearing tomorrow, so I'll be in for that. And I really enjoy the Judiciary Committee. I was assigned to it last year, or last session, I should say. And I was like, why am I on this? I'm not a lawyer. There's only 2 people on the committee that aren't lawyers. But I thought about, that question, and I thought, well, this is actually a great opportunity for me to present my perspective as a non-lawyer and how I would approach, these types of issues.
An outsider.
Yes.
Someone who's not biased by what they were taught.
Exactly. And ever since then, it's been emotional on different cases because of a lot of things that the Judiciary Committee takes up are very, very sensitive in nature and very personal for a lot of people. So it's been eye-opening in a variety of different senses. And then the other committees I serve on is small businesses and community development, and then the last one is racial equity and inclusion. But most of my work most of my committee work is through the judiciary. It's actually the committee in the House that receives the most amount of legislation. So I think we're up to 800 bills.
Amazing.
Yeah. So we have to have the most amount of hearings for bills because we have the most, we have the most bills in our committee.
Wow.
So we start really early.
That's really interesting. And you serve, as you said, on a diverse group of committees, so I'm sure it's never boring.
No. And I like learning about what other committees are doing too. Another interest of mine has been, for the past 2 years, revenue. I've been very interested in tax relief proposals that have been put forward by, the House and our past and current governor. And I think there's a real opportunity to get some momentum towards giving tax relief to our seniors and updating the estate tax. It's something that we've heard a lot about in our office, about those particular issues, and as well as other tax related bills.
Well, it's interesting how some of those issues have been lingering for 40 years, but really haven't had much action to get any closer to some sort of resolution.
Yeah.
But you're optimistic about what you hear?
Yeah. For example, on that note, we have a report from the auditor from 2005 that talks about how the senior circuit breaker, which if you haven't applied for it yet, seniors, it is tax time. It's basically a tax credit that is an income tax credit, but the way that your credit is calculated is if a senior is paying more than 10% of their income in property taxes and utilities, water, electric, heating, then you'll get a little bit of a refund from that, and it's refundable. So even if it's over, you'll get the refund still.
There's probably a tremendous number of seniors who reach that cap, I'm sure.
Yes.
They just maybe aren't aware of it.
Right. So this past session, we had a bill move through the House and the Senate that would have effectively doubled the cap for the senior circuit breaker, and we got very close to getting it across the finish line, but there were concerns around a different tax law, 62F, when everybody got their tax refunds that you remember getting. And it was a question of, are we going to be able to afford this all at once? So my hope is that, it's a new session now, and now that, we've had some time to look at the consensus revenue for this year, we'll be able to afford this and get this legislation moving again.
Because that's one of the challenges that state government faces, is really being able to project what the revenue is going to be, because you really can only spend what you have coming in.
Right, exactly. We had a really great February. January, we didn't hit our benchmarks, but in February, we sort of made up for that. So, we've been on a great trajectory and hitting most of our benchmarks for this past year, and it seems to be going well this year. So, it sounds like revenue has been very good. So I'm hoping we can give a little bit of that back to the people that need it.
Absolutely. And you talked a little bit earlier about when you got involved in local government, and you voiced your opinion at a public meeting and saw that one person can make a difference.
Right.
And I've always said that a lot of times if you feel a certain way about something, there's probably 100 other people out there that feel the same way.
Yes.
Nobody wants to speak up and talk about it. And you saw firsthand that even as a high school kid, if you present yourself well and you have a good point, people will listen and it can make a difference.
Yeah, one of the quotes that has always stuck with me, my entire life, was written by Governor Ann Richards of Texas. And one of the things that she wrote one time is, it's not always certain that good things will happen when people vote or participate, but it is darn sure that bad things will happen when people don't go and vote.
Absolutely. I think that's pretty insightful, and I'm sure she saw that in all the years that she had been involved. So it must have been interesting, again, become a member of the legislature and meeting just all your colleagues, the diverse, just like the community of North Attleboro and Attleboro are diverse, the legislature is made up of quite a variety of individuals. That must have been quite a learning experience.
Yeah, it's changing. We have a record number of women serving in the legislature for this session, a record number of people of color, and we serve with a lot of veterans, which is also a great perspective to have in the building. And I offer my perspective as a younger person in the building. So
it's funny how that's changed. I can remember Kevin Poirier telling me years ago when he held your position that he was there at a time when there were virtually no women in the House of Representatives, and now I'm not sure what percentage of them are women, but it's certainly a significant part of the body.
Yeah, it's pretty high. I mean, we elected our first in the country, our first female governor and lieutenant governor, the first female team, our auditor, our treasurer, and our attorney general. People want to see elected officials that look like them. So,
Well, that's a good point. I mean, I think, people should get elected based on their qualifications, and I think there are probably just as many qualified women out there as there are qualified men.
Sure.
And I'm sure the same holds true for all sorts of different demographic groups. But you make a good point that people tend to feel most comfortable if they're represented by someone who seems similar to them. It gives them a more comfortable feel. Because I'm sure, as you've encountered, there are a lot of people out there who feel disconnected from government until they actually meet someone like yourself, right? I'm sure there are a lot of your family and friends who had nothing to do with government until you got involved.
Right.
And now they feel a connection and are more willing to participate.
Yeah, I think that, so-and-so may not always have an interest in government, but government, for better or worse, has an interest in you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, we all have to do our part to speak our minds about the issues that matter to us, whether it be climate change, housing, healthcare affordability, and affordability in general. We're not going to get anywhere as a society unless everybody's rowing together and kind of working together. And I feel like in this new age of politics, it's even more difficult to do that for a couple of reasons. It's difficult to get information now with the decline of newspapers, across the country and across the world. And, with the coming of social media, sometimes, unfortunately, things might get misinterpreted. And sometimes people, I think COVID had a role in this, but people seem like more hostile nowadays in the way that we treat each other when we're talking about the issues. It can be difficult sometimes to sit down and have a coffee and say, hey, what do you think about this? Well, I think this. Okay, well, you're wrong and I'm right. And we have to get away from that because, that's where this gridlock comes from. Right. And, when President Reagan and Speaker O'Neill were able to get things done because they had that type of relationship. And I think that's what our voters expect from us, Yeah,
and it's what they should expect, but to your point, that's what I've observed, in the 30 plus years that I've been involved in politics. I've seen year after year after year, we've become more heavily opinionated and partisan, and people now have separated themselves into little groups, and if you don't fit right into their group, they see you as almost the enemy. And that makes it hard for someone like yourself who's trying to come up with just solutions that are in the best interest of the community to try to keep all these little factions content. And I think it takes someone with a certain kind of temperament and skill set like yourself. I mean, my observation of you, and I've observed a lot of politicians over the years, is that you're about as easygoing an individual as comes along, right? I mean, you pretty much can get along with anyone as long as they're respectful, even if they don't agree with you ideologically.
Sure. Yeah, and that's half the battle is to get them to participate in the first place. So, if they're willing to if anyone is willing to come to the table and talk, we got to pull up that chair for them because we're all eating off the same table.
Right. And people sometimes lose sight of that we're all in the same boat, and if we try working together, we'll get a much better result than if we just keep fighting with each other. So what things are going on at the State House that you're involved with that you're looking forward to?
Sure. I'm excited about continuing our advocacy for our omnibus bill around vocational education and expanding access to those types of programs by continued investments, creating a Office of Career and Technical Education that would be able to oversee advancements in these types of programs and kind of serve as a liaison to work with your Attleboro High School and other communities in that same vein. And for me, we've heard a lot about, unfortunately, the struggles of addiction and how that's impacted many communities. So, we filed legislation to expand the number of days that somebody can get acute care treatment under Mass Health for addiction-related issues, whether it be substance abuse or not. And with sports betting going into effect, I worry about the impact of problem gambling, especially on a younger generation. And you see ads everywhere now, whether it be on YouTube or Spotify, they're everywhere, and it's very inviting, But we have to make sure that we're doing it safe.
Yeah, I think we might be seeing them sort of leading into the next round of addictions. Gambling is, it's a nice pastime, but it can be really addictive for some individuals.
Right.
I was really impressed by you using the word investment when talking about vocational education. People so often look at schooling as spending. I've always viewed it as investment. As a business-minded person, I look at training as investing in your organization and in your manpower.
Sure.
And so using that phrase investment, I think is really important because, every community around here is trying to better educate their students for the future. And as we both know, those vocational programs train people for real jobs that they can get, in some cases right out of high school.
Yeah, and we've done some great work in the past, but we're at the point where, there's right here in Attleboro, some programs are already full. There's such a desire to participate in those types of programs. And when you have vocational schools, even in Tri-County, a lot of their programs are full. And all over the state, a lot of people have been concerned about, who are we serving? Are we giving these opportunities and to come in terms of enrollment to people that need these types of programs? So over the past 2 years, we've really seen a lot of research that has shown that there's an opportunity gap for people of color and students with intellectual disabilities to, one, get into these type of program, but also know about them. There seems to be an awareness gap. And, we have to do a better job of letting our students know that these types of programs exist, in throughout the Commonwealth. Attleboro is very lucky to have its own CTE program,
right.
At the high school. But for communities like North Attleboro, we want to ensure that they have all of the options available, and hopefully bring some non-duplicative trades back to North Attleboro High School at some point. That meet the workforce needs. I think about it. If we pave Union Street right now, and we do everything right in front of where we are right now, we pave it. Okay, 15 or 10 years later, is there going to be a workforce at that time to maintain it? And I'm not sure. I don't know if we're doing enough to invest in a workforce that meets those local needs, but people that are going to be maintaining infrastructure all over the country.
Now, you make a good point. A lot of the trades that involve, physical labor, be it, electrical, plumbing, those things are in such high demand, but are we preparing enough students for the future down the road, 10, 20, 30 years? Because 20, 30 years does go really fast.
Yeah.
And the people who are going to be in those roles 20 years from now are kids today. So now you represent a piece of Attleboro, a piece of Mansfield, and all of North Attleboro.
Yes.
that's got to be an interesting balance in and of itself, right? It requires you to get to meet a lot more people than normally.
Very different communities, similar needs, and some so not so similar needs. So it's always interesting to hear the perspectives of what each community needs or what the opportunities and challenges are, and three different forms of government. Mansfield still has town meeting, and North Attleboro has a town council, town manager, and Attleboro has a mayor. So it's you have to be adaptable in how you work with people and be flexible, as each city and town in the district has a different process of how things work.
Yeah, now in North Attleboro, you were involved with the whole change in North Attleboro, and I'm sure as someone who's interested in government, you found that really interesting, I'm sure. Do you feel that it's worked out well, that the whole process is?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I will say it has become difficult to try to have people participate now and then. I just haven't seen as many people go to the meetings as you would have at like a town meeting, so it's difficult to get information out, but it's definitely more efficient, and I know the town manager's door is always open, and he's constantly fielding calls and questions, but you know, I do worry, are we losing a segment of the community that doesn't know that's going on? And I will say the council is working very, very hard to try to provide as much engagement and awareness as possible so that people know what's happening in their community.
And you seem to have an ample number of qualified candidates interested in participating, at least at the elected level.
Yes, yeah, I think we have a great town council in North Attleboro. We have our election next month. Turnout has been a negative factor in the past. Last year I think it was about 3.5% for the whole town. So
but I'm sure one of the things you've been doing, I'm sure, is getting other younger people that you know to be more actively involved. And that's a good thing. Every time someone new runs for office, they naturally get the people they know to get a little bit more actively involved, and that tends to build on itself.
Yeah, it takes one, to make a chain reaction, and you start, and it can be on any issue. I was talking to somebody the other day about the way that she got involved in government was because she was concerned about the traffic in her neighborhood, and she got her foot in the door on that particular issue. But in the process, she learned so much more about her local government by, walking into town hall and learning, what does this person do? What does this person do? What are we doing about this? And so on and so forth. So
that's great. And hopefully we'll get more and more people like that who take that first step inside city or town hall and get involved. We're running a little bit late on time this evening, but I want to thank you so much, well, first for running for office and getting involved, but also for being here this evening and talking to the local public so that they can get a little more familiar with you. And hopefully we'll have you back on sometime in the future when you have some information you'd like to share with the public.
Absolutely. That would be wonderful.
Thank you so much for being here this evening.
Thank you, John.
And thank all of you for tuning in this week for People It's Good to Know. There are so many people out there who want to volunteer and find a way in which they can help.
We've got some brilliant people that have come out of the school system here in Attleboro.
You actually perform as an elected official the way people should.
There are no agendas. Nobody has any projects that they have to complete, but we're just sharing information